The hum of distant traffic was muffled, almost as if the world itself had quieted to listen. In front of her, a holographic photo hovered, a moment from her childhood, a sunlit afternoon with her mother and a small dog she barely remembered. The image flickered, twisted, and for a heartbeat, the faces blurred into something unrecognizable. She blinked rapidly, heart pounding. Was it a glitch in her system? Or something far worse? Her hands trembled as she reached for the photo, trying to steady the wavering image, but the distortion deepened. The edges of the memory frayed, colors bleeding into one another until the scene collapsed entirely, leaving only a black void. Lila swallowed hard, the cold realization settling in her chest. What if these fragments weren't just glitches? What if her memories had been tampered with? She leaned back, the chair creaking under her slight weight, and closed her eyes. The past few weeks had been a relentless barrage of digital puzzles and shadowy encounters. Every discovery led to more questions, and every question deepened the abyss of uncertainty she was falling into. Her fragmented memories weren't just inconvenient, they were dangerous. They blurred the lines between who she was and who someone else wanted her to be. A sudden flicker in the apartment's lighting jolted her back to the present. The power dipped briefly, then plummeted into total darkness. The hum of electronics died, leaving only the soft whistle of the wind brushing against the building's glass skin. Panic prickled at her senses. She fumbled for her laptop, the only source of reliable light and connection to the outside world. When she hit the power button, the screen sprang to life, its cold blue glow a fragile anchor in the blackness. Lines of code scrolled rapidly across the display fragments of data logs she had intercepted during her earlier hacks. They were incomplete, scrambled, and most troublingly, heavily redacted. Among the encrypted layers, she spotted references to behavioral modifications, memory protocols, and something labeled Subject L7. Her breath hitched. Could that be her? Was she one of the test subjects? The apartment felt suddenly claustrophobic. The walls, once transparent and open, now seemed to close in, whispering secrets she wasn't meant to hear. She rose and paced, the soft tap of her footsteps echoing faintly. In the corner of her eye, the cracked mirror on the wall caught her attention. She stared at her reflection-sharp features, dark eyes rimmed with exhaustion, but then something shifted. For a brief second, her face blurred and morphed into that of a stranger. A woman she didn't recognize. The image snapped back before she could process it, leaving her breathless and dizzy. "Am I losing my mind?" she whispered, voice trembling. No answer came, only the hollow silence. She returned to the mirror, eyes searching for any sign of deception. But the room remained still, the faint scent of cold metal and recycled air filling her lungs. The skyscraper was alive with secrets, its steel and glass veins pulsing with hidden machinery and surveillance. She was caught in its grip, a lone hacker fighting a battle on multiple fronts against external enemies and the ghosts within her own mind. Suddenly, a faint murmur drifted through the walls, whispers just beyond comprehension. She pressed her ear to the cold surface, heart racing. The voices were urgent, fragmented, echoing through the vents and conduit snatches of code, pleas, warnings. Lila's skin prickled with paranoia. Was it the building's security systems? Or something else? Someone trying to reach her through the static? She pulled back, her breath shallow. The apartment felt empty, but the weight of unseen eyes pressed down. She wrapped her arms around herself, the chill of isolation sinking in. Trust was a luxury she could no longer afford, not in the skyscraper, not in her own mind. Hours passed in restless pacing and frantic note-taking. Lila scoured every file, every encrypted message, piecing together a mosaic of manipulation and control. Her memories, once a refuge, now felt like a trapdoor beneath her feet. The experiments were not confined to others, they had reached into her past, rewriting the script of her life. Sleep eluded her, replaced by a relentless determination. If her mind was a battlefield, she would fight tooth and nail to reclaim it. She would uncover the truth, no matter the cost. As dawn's pale light seeped through the windows, Lila stared out over the city's glittering sprawl, a lone figure against the sprawling glass tower. 10 floors below, the secrets festered, waiting, and she was ready to descend. But first, She needed to face the fragments and fears that threatened to consume her. Her phone buzzed softly, a message from Ethan, "We need to talk." Now, Lila swallowed the lump in her throat and typed back, "I'm coming." The fight was only beginning. Lila Morgan sat rigidly on the edge of a metal crate, fingers flying across the keyboard in a blur of practiced precision. Beside her, Ethan Shaw maintained a watchful eye on the door, his posture tense but controlled, muscles coiled like a predator ready to spring. The air smelled faintly of ozone and stale recycled air, mingling with the faint hum of dozens of servers working overtime to keep the building's digital heart beating. "Almost there," Ethan whispered, voice low but steady. "Just a few more layers to bypass. These guys don't want anyone poking around their files." Lila nodded, her sharp gaze fixated on the lines of code scrolling rapidly across her screen. The encrypted data packets they intercepted earlier had proven only the tip of the iceberg. Now, peeling back firewall after firewall, they were closing in on something far more sinister than either had anticipated. "Look at this," Lila murmured, dragging a file open. The screen filled with detailed document psychological profiles, behavioral conditioning schedules, and what appeared to be logs of memory alterations performed on residents. They've been running experiments on people living here. Mind manipulation, memory erasure, emotional conditioning. Ethan's jaw tightened. That's not just unethical, it's criminal. They worked in near silence, the only sounds the rhythmic tapping of keys and the occasional beep from the system. Every new file they uncovered added another layer of darkness to the building's hidden story. The residents, many of whom thought themselves merely lucky tenants of a luxury skyscraper, were unwitting subjects in a grand experiment orchestrated from the shadows. Lila's mind raced. Memories flickered at the edges, fragments of lost time, sudden lapses she'd chalked up to stress. Could she have been one of those subjects? The thought sent a shiver down her spine, mingling with the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "We need to download everything," Ethan said, breaking her reverie. "The more evidence we have, the better chance we've got of exposing this." "Agreed," Lila replied, fingers flying. But just as the transfer began, an alarm beeped sharply from the corner of the room, an intrusion detection system activating. "Shit," Ethan hissed. "We've been spotted. They're on to us." Lila's heart pounded as she initiated a countermeasure, launching a cascade of digital smokescreens designed to confuse the security protocols. Outside the server walls, footsteps echoed, growing closer, the heavy thud of boots signaling that their time was running out. Almost done, she breathed, desperation creeping into her voice. "Just hold them off a little longer." Ethan moved swiftly, pulling a small device from his pocket and jamming it into a nearby terminal. Sparks flew briefly as the power flickered, the room bathed in erratic light. The alarm ceased. "Got it," Ethan said, a grim smile crossing his face. "Back door's open, let's move." Clutching the stolen data, they slipped out of the server room, shadows swallowing them as they darted through narrow hallways. Each step was a gamble, each breath a battle against the building's unseen eyes. But now, armed with truths hidden behind closed doors, they had a weapon more powerful than any code knowledge. The revelations in those files shifted the ground beneath Lila's feet. The skyscraper was not just a home. It was a cage, a laboratory, a battleground for control over human minds. And she was right in the heart of it. Outside, the city lights flickered, indifferent to the war unfolding in the depths below. But inside Lila, a fierce determination ignited, burning away the fear. They had to expose the truth, no matter the cost. The night was far from over, and the real fight was just beginning. Above her, the towering glass skyscraper shimmered in the fading twilight, a beacon of luxury and power, but to Lila it was a cage. Her fingers tapped nervously against the strap of her backpack as she checked her watch for the third time in as many minutes. Somewhere in the shadows of this building, a secret was buried, and tonight she was supposed to dig deeper. She had arranged to meet someone who could provide a window into the darkest corners of the skyscraper's hidden truths. Dr. Naomi Chun, the name had surfaced through encrypted communications, whispered warnings from unknown allies, and a chance encounter with a jittery building staffer who had slipped a note into her mailbox. Naomi was said to be a scientist who had grown disillusioned with the experiments she was forced to participate in. Someone who wanted out, and more importantly, someone willing to help. The faint sound of footsteps echoed from the far end of the garage. Layla's heart quickened as a figure emerged from the shadows, a slender woman in a crisp lab coat, her delicate features framed by strands of dark hair that fell nervously across her face. Naomi's eyes flicked around the empty space, alert but resigned. "You're Lila?" Naomi asked softly, her voice barely carrying over the distant hum of the city. "That's me," Lila replied, stepping forward cautiously. "You said you have information." Naomi nodded, producing a small encrypted drive from inside her coat. "I can't talk here. Follow me." They moved quickly, the sound of their footsteps swallowed by the cavernous silence of the parking garage. Naomi led her through a service door into a narrow corridor, sterile walls illuminated by harsh fluorescent light. The scent of antiseptic hung in the air, mingling with a faint metallic tang. In a small, sparsely furnished office tucked away behind a locked door, Naomi finally let down her guard. She placed the encrypted drive on the desk and pulled up a series of digital files on the monitor. Charts, graphs, and patient logs flickered across the screen, revealing a grim tableau of clinical experiments. "This is the real work going on 10 floors below," Naomi whispered, her fingers trembling as she navigated between files. "They're erasing memories, rewriting identities. This isn't just surveillance or corporate spying. It's mind control on residents, employees, anyone they choose." Layla's eyes narrowed as she absorbed the data. There were images of devices, sleek, invasive machines designed to interface directly with the brain, records of brain scans before and after procedures, and logs detailing emotional conditioning protocols. Some entries listed residents by number, others by name, though many identities were redacted or altered. "Why are you helping me?" Layla asked, suspicion sharpening her tone. Naomi hesitated, then said, "Because I can't be part of this anymore. I joined for the science, for the potential to help people, but this is monstrous. And if you don't stop them, no one will." A sudden beep from Naomi's device cut through the quiet, and her eyes darted to the screen. "They're onto me," she said urgently. "You have to be careful now. They won't hesitate to erase you, or worse." Layla packed the drive quickly, her mind racing. This was bigger than she imagined. The corporation wasn't just monitoring, they were puppeteering minds, erasing memories to cover their tracks and control dissent. "You can trust me," Lila said firmly. "We'll get this out." Naomi gave a shaky nod before slipping out, leaving Lila alone in the cold office. The weight of the secret pressed down, but beneath the fear was a flicker of hope. She had allies now, but the cost of trust in this place was high, and the shadows were closing in. Layla stepped back into the corridor, her resolve hardening. The skyscraper's glass walls gleamed above, but the truth was buried deep, and she was ready to descend into the darkness to uncover it. The fight had just begun. The night stretched on as Lila pored over the files Naomi had given her, cross-referencing data, piecing together the fragmented evidence. Every revelation pulled her deeper into a web of deceit and cruelty. She could almost hear the whispered echoes of those who had suffered within the building's hidden sub-basement, their memories stolen and rewritten. Her own fragmented recollections flickered at the edge of her mind, a chilling reminder that she might already be one of the victims. But now, armed with Naomi's secret and a renewed sense of purpose, Layla was determined to expose the truth and fight the monstrous machinery that sought to control them all. Outside, the city's neon glow flickered against the night sky, but inside the skyscraper, 10 floors below ground, darkness reigned. And Lila Morgan was ready to face it head-on. The meeting with Naomi marked a turning point. As Lila moved through the skyscraper's corridors in the days that followed, each step was shadowed by the knowledge that eyes watched her every move. Security protocols tightened, and paranoia gnawed at her sanity. Yet, with each new piece of information, her determination grew. Naomi's warnings echoed in her mind. Trust was a fragile, precious thing here. But without it, no truth could be brought to light. Lila glanced back once more at the encrypted drive, its silent promise burning in her pocket. The secret of the skyscraper was no longer hers alone. It was a burden shared and a weapon against the darkness below. The fight was far from over, and the real descent was only just beginning. Lila Morgan crouched beside a terminal, her fingers dancing rapidly over the keyboard, the glow from the monitors casting sharp shadows on her focused face. Ethan Shaw was at her side, eyes darting to the door even as he assisted in bypassing the latest digital firewall. Their breaths were shallow, synchronized in the silent rhythm of urgency. "Almost there," Ethan whispered, voice tight. "Just need a few more seconds to decrypt this segment." Lila nodded, sweat beading at her temple despite the chill of the room. The encrypted files they sought to extract held the proof of the corporation's darkest, secret mind manipulation experiments conducted beneath the very ground they stood on. Every second felt like a gamble, as if the building itself was holding its breath, waiting to catch them in the act. Suddenly, the room erupted in a shrill alarm. Red lights bathed the space in a harsh, unyielding glow. The monitors flashed warnings and security protocols initiated automatically. Layla's heart lurched. "They know, Ethan. We triggered something." Ethan cursed it under his breath, fingers flying faster over the keyboard. "Hold on, I'm trying to stall the system." Outside the server room, footsteps pounded against the polished floors, heavy and purposeful. Javier Cruz, the security chief, moved with lethal precision. His presence was a cold shadow stalking the corridors, his every step echoing the threat he posed. He checked his tactical display, eyes narrowing as the location of the breach blinked insistently. "They're inside the server room," he muttered, voice low but filled with authority. "I want them caught. No mistakes." Inside, Lila's mind raced. The alarms were more than just warnings, they were a declaration of war. "We have to move," she hissed to Ethan, pulling a USB drive from the terminal. "If they catch us here, it's over." Ethan nodded, snapping his laptop shut. "Follow me." They slipped out of the server room into the labyrinthine halls of the skyscraper's lower levels. The air was thick with an antiseptic chill that contrasted sharply with the pounding heat of their fear. Lights flickered overhead, their hum a steady reminder of the omnipresent surveillance. "Which way?" Lila whispered, scanning the corridor. "Back toward the staff elevators," Ethan replied. "Least monitored, but we'll have to be quick." They moved like shadows, pressed close to the walls. Every sound amplified in Lila's ears, their own footsteps, the distant shouts of security, the mechanical whir of cameras panning. A sudden noise to their left made Lila freeze. A door creaked open and a security guard rounded the corner. With barely a moment's thought, Ethan grabbed Lila's arm and pulled her into a narrow alcove. They pressed their bodies flat against the cool metal wall, holding their breath as the guard's steps thundered past. "Too close," Lila murmured, heart racing. They continued, weaving through corridors until they reached a stairwell leading upward. But the sound of heavy boots behind them was closing fast. Javier Cruz's voice crackled over the comms, sharp and commanding. "They're on the move. Don't let them escape." Lila's mind spun. The data they'd stolen was precious proof enough to topple a corporate empire, but the price of capture was unthinkable. She glanced at Ethan, who gave a grim nod. "We split up," he said. "I'll create a diversion. You get the data out." "No," Lila said, shaking her head. "We do this together." But before they could argue, footsteps converged ahead. Javier appeared, blocking their path, his eyes cold and unyielding, going somewhere. Lila's breath caught. The corridor was too narrow to fight effectively. Thinking fast, she kicked a loose panel on the wall, sending sparks flying and plunging the hall into darkness. The alarm screamed louder, the building's chaos swallowing their movements. "Now!" Lila shouted, grabbing Ethan's hand. They sprinted through the emergency exit, the stale air outside a sudden shock to their senses. Behind them, Javier's frustrated curse echoed. The chase was far from over, but for now, they had escaped. Panting, Lila leaned against the cold brick of a service alley, eyes darting to the data drive clenched in her fist. Her mind churned with paranoia had they been seen. Was the data intact? Could she trust anyone anymore? Ethan exhaled sharply. "We crossed a line," he said. "No turning back now." Layla swallowed her fear. The skyscraper's secrets were unraveling, and with each step, the walls closed in tighter. But she was determined. The room was dim, bathed in the cold blue glow of her laptop screen, its light flickering across the scattered papers and cracked photographs on the desk before her. She picked up one photo, worn and blurred, the edges frayed like the edges of her own recollections. It was a picture of herself, but something about the image felt off, as if it belonged to someone else, or a version of her that she could no longer fully grasp. Her fingers trembled as she traced the outline of her face, trying to summon the memory tied to that moment. But the past was a fractured mirror, reflecting shards that refused to form a coherent whole. Faces, places, feelings all flickered in and out of focus like static on a broken transmission. She swallowed hard, a lump rising in her throat as she forced herself to sit back and breathe. The apartment was silent except for the soft whir of her computer's cooling fans. Outside, the city's pulse carried on, indifferent to her inner turmoil. She closed her eyes, willing herself to remember. Then, without warning, a sudden flash seared through her mind, a sterile room bathed in harsh white light, cold metal surfaces gleaming under fluorescent bulbs, the faint scent of antiseptic. The sound of distant footsteps echoing down endless corridors. Panic surged as she realized she was trapped, restrained, struggling against invisible bonds. The memory shattered before she could grasp it fully, leaving her gasping for breath, heart pounding. Layla opened her eyes, sweat beading on her forehead. The lines between reality and illusion blurred, and a creeping dread settled deep in her gut. Was this a memory or a manufactured nightmare? Had she been a subject in the experiments she was trying to expose? The thought clawed at her, relentless and terrifying. Determined not to succumb to despair, Lila turned back to her laptop. She opened encrypted files and logs she had painstakingly gathered, scanning through lines of code and fragmented data. Her eyes ached from hours of strain, but she pressed on, searching for any clue that could anchor her scattered thoughts. Each discovery was a double-edged sword, evidence of the corporation's reach, hints of manipulation and disturbing implications about her own past. Despite the growing paranoia gnawing at her mind, Lila's resolve hardened. She would unravel the truth no matter the cost. But the deeper she delved, the more isolated she felt. Trust was a luxury she could no longer afford, not in the digital shadows where allies might be enemies and memories could be weaponized. In a rare moment of quiet, she whispered into the stillness of her apartment, "Who am I, really?" The question echoed unanswered, swallowed by the cold walls. Alone with her fractured memories and mounting fears, Lila knew the battle was no longer just against external forces, it was a war for her very identity. And as the night deepened, the skyscraper around her seemed less like a home and more like a prison, its hidden secrets closing in 10 floors below. The journey to the truth had only just begun, but already the shadows of memory threatened to consume her. A sudden chime from her laptop broke the silence, an encrypted message blinking on the screen. Layla's breath caught. Was it a warning, a clue, or a trap? She hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Whatever lay behind that message, she knew one thing for certain: there was no turning back now. Despite the late hour, the air felt charged with urgency. Lila sat hunched forward, eyes fixed on cascades of encrypted code scrolling across her main screen. Beside her, Ethan Shaw leaned in, his tall frame silhouetted against the bluish light, fingers poised and ready to assist. Dr. Naomi Chun, her delicate face tense with both resolve and anxiety, watched over their shoulders, ready to provide the scientific context only she could offer. There, Ethan breathed, a sharp intake of breath breaking the silence. This segment, these packets. They're not just internal corporate communications. They're encoded messages to government operatives. Layla's eyes sharpened, her mind racing as she cross-referenced the data. Can you isolate the source? Naomi pointed at a series of encrypted signatures layered beneath the main transmissions. And these rival corporate entities? They're jockeying for position, trying to get their hands on Vel's technology. This isn't just a corporate project anymore. It's an arms race. The implications settled over them like a thick fog. A secret sub-basement conducting mind experiments was sinister enough. But the tentacles reaching into government agencies and corporate rivals elevated the stakes beyond personal survival. This was a battle for control of human consciousness itself. Layla's fingers danced over the keyboard, breaking through yet another encryption layer. The room seemed to pulse with the tension of their discovery. "We're not just fighting a corporation," she said quietly. "We're up against a network that could rewrite reality for millions." Ethan rubbed the stubble on his chin, his usual easy charm replaced by a grim seriousness. "And that network knows we're here? I just picked up a trace. Someone's probing our systems. They're closing in." Naomi's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her glasses. "I never wanted to be part of this. When I joined the research division, I thought I was helping advance medicine, not weaponizing minds." Layla looked at her, the flicker of vulnerability in Naomi's eyes momentarily softening her own guarded expression. "We'll get through this," she said. "But we need to be smarter, faster, and more careful. Trust is a luxury we can't afford, but it's also the only way we survive." The trio fell into a tense silence, each absorbed in the gravity of their situation. Outside, the city lights shimmered obliviously, unaware of the digital war waging within the glass walls of the skyscraper. Hours stretched as they peeled back layers of encrypted files, revealing contracts, covert operations, and chilling plans to expand the mind control experiments beyond the building's walls. The data hinted at a shadowy alliance between powerful stakeholders, each hungry to harness the technology for their own ends. Suddenly, a warning blared from Ethan's system, an intrusion attempt detected. "They're here," he said, voice low but urgent. "We've got to move." Lila's mind raced to formulate a plan. Their mission was no longer just about exposing the experiments. It was about outmaneuvering an enemy that reached into every corridor of power. Every keystroke, every decision became a gamble, but the truth was worth the risk. As they scrambled to secure their data and prepare for the next phase, Layla couldn't shake the feeling that the deeper they delved, the more dangerous the game became. The encrypted truths they uncovered were only the beginning of a perilous descent into a labyrinth of conspiracy, betrayal, and mind control. "And somewhere in the shadows, Doctor." Marcus Vell and his allies watched, waiting for the moment to strike back. The fight for autonomy over memory and identity was only just beginning. The cyber-lit room buzzed with a tension that was almost tangible. Layla's eyes, sharp and unblinking, scanned the decrypted files that painted a disturbing picture, a nexus of corporate greed, government complicity, and the ruthless pursuit of power. "This isn't just science," Naomi whispered, voice trembling. "It's control. Complete control," Ethan nodded grimly. "And it's bigger than we thought. Rival companies are circling like vultures. If this technology falls into the wrong hands—" "We can't let that happen," Lila interrupted, voice steely. "We have to expose everything." But as she spoke, the soft ping of an alert pulled their attention back to the screen. An unknown hacker was probing their defenses, testing their firewall like a predator-smelling weakness. Lila's heart pounded. The digital battlefield was expanding, and the enemies were closing in. Yet, in the depths of her paranoia, a flicker of determination burned brighter than ever. "We're not alone in this," she said, voice low but resolute, "and we won't back down." The encrypted truths had been uncovered. Now the real fight to reclaim identity and freedom began.